Hey, welcome back to another lens review. Today we're looking at something a little bit more niche and specific. This here is the 90mm Canon tilt shift lens. Now, this is very specific to what I do as a food or a product photographer. This is really useful, but it's also great as a portrait photographer. I'm going to show you some test shots, but also some of my portfolio where I've used this for creative effect or to get over technical hurdles. Now, there is a newer version of this, there's an L version, which absolutely just destroys this lens. It is so much better, especially on the high resolution sensors. But this is cheap, this is good, and this gets the job done. Now, I have a 100mm Zeiss lens as well. If I need absolute image quality without the technical drawbacks it has, I'd go for that. This does not render as good an image as the Zeiss, but it does a lot of things that the Zeiss can't do. Now, as with all tilt shift lens, this is completely manual focus. It's got a decent focus throw. We also have the tilt functionality to employ the Schimflung principle, and the shift, which is where you can move the lens along like this. Now, I've got a video all about tilt shift lenses and stitching them together for panoramics. I'll try and do a link somewhere to that. Maybe it comes up here somewhere. Don't know. We'll see what I can do in post. But this is a useful lens. Now, the build quality is pretty good. It's a solid metal chunk. However, there should be a screw here, and there isn't. And it's because you tighten these up, well, I've obviously lost that one. Tighten these little screws here up, and they just get jammed. This one here is jammed. It's loose, but it's jammed. All of the old tilt shift lenses do this. It drives me mental. So this one just snapped off about a week after buying it, which is very infuriating. But it doesn't affect performance in any way, and getting it repaired is just prohibitively expensive. Right, let's jump into the computer and have a look at these images and see what we're working with. So straight off the bat, one of the things I love about this lens is the outer focus area, and I'm not a bokeh whore. It just looks so pleasing. It has the rendering of a medium format lens in the outer focus areas. It copes with the highlights pretty well. We get some pretty badass fringing and purples and greens coming in here. It's not the most detailed. You know, it is not a super high resolution lens. It's pretty good, but it's not amazing. Now, the benefit to this lens is, though, as we move along here to f5, and we get a really sharp, detailed image. Using the Schimflung principle, I can swing this lens around and get a depth of field where we have the pineapple and this light in the background in focus. In hindsight, should have done that for a test shot, but there we go. Use your imagination. It looks cool. It's a good lens. It's not the best lens optically, but it's not. You're not buying it for the optical performance. It's as good as the 100mm Canon lens, but it's not as good as the Zeiss 100mm lens, which is probably what you're comparing it to. Focus is pretty darn close. Out of focus areas at f5 still pretty pleasing. As we jump into f8, you know, it's a sharp image. It looks great at this, and this is a 50 megapixel sensor, so it really does highlight any faults. I think we get a bit of motion blur in that shot. Should have used flash, but the problem with using flash for these shots was everything looked great, and that wasn't really what I was trying to show you. I wanted to show you the drawbacks, really. So this is f16. Now, it's a decent amount in focus at f16, so we get the whole pineapple pretty much. It's reasonably detailed, but it lacks the character and sort of beauty of, say, the Zeiss lens. However, f16, swing that lens around, you can get pretty much any product completely in focus. So it is a very good lens for, you know, certain applications. Now let's jump into my portfolio, because I want to show you how I've been using this. Now I'm going to jump into portraits first, because I think that this is a great portrait lens. So I'm a big fan of the old 90s large format look. So this is created with that lens. It's a bit of a tricky lighting setup, which doesn't really give you the full picture as to what I'm doing with the lens. But you can see how the ears, eyes and cheeks and mouth are in focus, but nothing else. So that creative focus control for me, I mean, you can't do it for every shot. It's a bit of a one-trick pony. I think I've got 2 shots in here with it. Here we go, here's another one. Just really isolates the eyes. It can be really, you know, useful in there. And I think for weddings, you can get some really cool stuff. It's a bit dated, I guess, now. The wedding look came in recently, and then obviously it's gone out again. But it has its place in portraits, for sure. And obviously you can just use it as a standard lens to replace your 85 or 100mm. Now, in terms of food photography, I'm not sure what I have left in my portfolio that used it. However, I know for a fact, we jump up to, where have we gone? Oh, I've moved it all around. Here we go. This is shot with a 2.8 without using any of the special features. And it's a really nice rendering lens at 2.8. I think it's a really beautiful image you get from this lens. And then here I've used it to control the plane of focus. So I've angled it down and sort of pointed the lens up away from the direction the camera's moving in. This is at f5.6. Really dreamy little bit of focus play here. But you still get that absolute tack sharp image because it's at 5.6. So as well as increasing the depth of field by moving the lens in the right direction, you can also decrease it. Now this shot here is a composite, it's 3 images. We didn't have enough space to get the camera high enough. So we did a composite with this lens to create a high resolution image. It's before I had my 5DS. And that works really well for me as well. It gives you medium format image quality, minus the bit depth, on a 35mm camera. Now there's one more shot in here that I need. Here we go. So this was shot last year. It's a 60 megapixel file shot on a 20 megapixel camera because I've stitched the images together again. So it gives you that really nice depth, a real 3D look to the image that you can't achieve with a standard lens. So there we go. The lens, it's useful, but it's pretty niche and specific. Personally, I'd buy this before I bought a 100mm macro if I was a food or still life photographer. But if you're a portrait photographer, maybe an 85 or 100 or 105 is a better lens to go for. If you have the money, absolutely go for the better L version. It'll be more future-proof. Cameras are only going to get higher in resolution, not lower. So if you have the cash, splash out on the L lens. This, however, is an absolutely brilliant lens. I use it weekly, actually. I should have bought it far sooner than I did. I was renting it for years, going, oh, it's a bit niche, it's a bit specialist. But when you're renting it for almost every shoot, it's just time to jump in and buy it. Hope you enjoyed these videos. If you do like them, do hit subscribe, do share them with your friends, and I'll see you all next time.